I think we have a very exciting future for Arrow. I think this is a wonderful opportunity where we're sitting in a world-class province with major companies to the south of us, infrastructural development moving ahead, and we've got very clear targets that we want to hit in the next 12 to 24 months. So I think this is going to be a fantastic opportunity and a great leverage to the iron ore industry.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar with Arrow Minerals. I'm Dannika Warburton, I'm the Principal of Investability, and I'm joined today by Hugh Bresser, the Managing Director of Arrow Minerals, live from Cape Town, where he is up very early in the morning and is about to head off to some investor meetings and as part of the Indaba conference. So Hugh's very keen to talk to you today and share the Arrow Minerals narrative. And we're going to start off by sharing the presentation, followed by a Q&A. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Hugh.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dannika. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining me today and joining us with this webinar. I'll apologise in advance. We may have a few little streaming issues with internet connections, but bear with us and we'll take you through the presentation today. So this is really an update for everyone that's interested in Arrow Minerals and our Simandou project in Guinea, which is a major opportunity, we believe, to move into the high end of iron ore. It's focused on high-grade iron ore in West Africa. We're targeting a development opportunity in the future that moves us into the decarbonisation area of the green steel world, moving with blast furnaces. The Simandou range has been around since 1997, but it hosts the largest high-grade undeveloped iron ore deposits in the world, with both Rio and Winning active to the south of us. And we're in the process of acquiring a 60% or 60.5% interest in the Simandou North Project, which abuts the Winning project to the south of us. And we're in the development stage of lining out our drill program with the potential to identify these high-grade zones. And we'll talk more to that as we go through the presentation today. Now, a little bit about Arrow and who we are. We've got a very strong board, and we've recently added Alvain Voster, who is with us from BCI and Iron Ore Holdings, so he's strengthening our iron ore experience and background. We've got a board that's experienced in not only developing junior companies, but also developing infrastructure and mines. We've got a capital structure that provides a huge leverage for those people interested in exposure to the iron ore market. And as a company, we're very focused in West Africa. That's where we believe there is an enormous opportunity for companies to build their position as West Africa develops and infrastructure comes into the play. So for us as a company, we have a very clear focus for the next 12 to 24 months, which is around drilling our high priority targets and trying to move forward with our high grade iron ore. And we have a very aggressive timeline. We want to move quickly on these opportunities. A little bit more on our board management. Our chairman, Tommy McKeith, is a well-experienced executive in the mining industry, having worked with companies like Evolution, Goldfields, and Genesis. Myself, I'm a geologist with over 30 years experience, worked with BHP, South32, Billiton, and been involved with the junior industry since about 2006. Fraser Taberner comes with a pedigree from Western mining, but also an extensive experience in operating junior companies and operating in multi-jurisdictional areas. And then we have Alvain Voster, who I mentioned earlier, who has joined us as a non-executive director with a background in iron ore development and large-scale development opportunities. At the moment, our market capitalisation is around 15 million, and I think it provides a huge leverage opportunity for anyone interested in the company. Our plan for movements over the next 12 months, we've been moving through reprocessing geophysical data and having people and teams in the field. But our big push is to start drilling later this quarter or early next quarter and drilling out our main target zones for the next sort of 4 to 6 months. So that'll provide us with a continuous news flow along drilling activities, drilling results, and upgrading of targets as we move forward. We're also planning to continue to push through with some more detailed geophysics as the targets advance to a stronger position. A little bit on Guinea itself. So Guinea is located in West Africa. It's been an area that has had great geological potential for many years that haven't really been explored or exported to this point. The bauxite to the north has started to develop quickly, and we're seeing a lot of gold mines now operating in the area. And Simandou itself is starting now to really build up a head of steam to start moving forwards to a production platform. In the next sort of 4 to 5 years, we anticipate the infrastructure to have been built and Simandou to become a reality. The mining code has been around since 2012, and jurisdictionally, it's a relatively stable West African country in line with places like Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana. So this is a country that we feel is a very safe place for us to operate. Now, moving more into our project itself, the Simandou North Iron Project, and where it sits relative to Rio to the south and the Singapore-based Winning that sits directly south to us. Our permit covers the northern extension of the Simandou Range, and the Simandou Range hosts both Winning's and Rio's deposits. They are around about, between the two of them, there's probably around about 4 billion tonnes of reported iron ore with a grade of 65.5%, which is a very high grade iron ore. And with low phos and low silica, it also has low impurities. So this deposits, these formations are certainly a high grade opportunity and an opportunity to feed into the future market within our area. Our blocks themselves were previously held by, or at least half of it was held by Vale and BSGR. They did a limited amount of work on the area before they focused in on the southern blocks that Winning now have. And the work that they've done provided us with a very significant opportunity. We were able to secure the geophysical image or geophysical data that was flown by Vale. They flew that data in 2007, and we were able to get the raw data and have that reprocessed using modern technologies. The image to the right, you can see the more regional geophysics in the background and the highlighted red zones through the center, and then we've overlaid the stratigraphy from Rio and Winning and our own blocks on top of that. Then once we overlay the reprocessed geophysics, you can see the large red signals in the middle of our tenement block. And that's indicating where the banded iron formations sit. So these are the formations that contain the iron hosting lithologies that we're interested in. We've had our geological team out in the field, and they've been doing surface mapping, which is the image you can see to the left. The things that we're seeing at surface, we're seeing a silicious hematite, which is an iron-bearing ore stone. And we also see goethite and hematite developments. But more importantly as well, we see this Kanga development. And Kanga is an iron laterite that forms over the top of hematite bodies. So this is a key indicator for us as to where we want to focus our work. Now, the advantage of having obtained the raw geophysical data was we were able to apply modern processing technologies to better analyse the information. And what we're looking at to the left we've modelled it down to 200 metres using an inversion technology. This is a 100-metre depth slice. And what we're looking for, the hematite is created through the destruction of magnetite. So within the larger magnetic signatures, we're looking for dappled depletion zones that indicate where we may see significant hematite development. And from that, what we're seeing, certainly to the southern end, we see a lot of dappling in that large pod to the south, which sits just down in here. And we also see dappling development through the centre and then up to the north. Then to the right, what we've done is overlaid the geology from the surface mapping onto the geophysical image. And we can see there where the geology and the geophysics match, and we get a very strong indication of where we would anticipate to see hematite developments in high-grade zones. Certainly, we see this area to the south, and then as we come up, the coincidence between geology and geophysics is very strong and indicates for us that we've got about 5 zones that we really want to focus in on. Each of those are about 5 to 7 kilometres long, which is about the same geometry that we're seeing to the south with Winning and with Rio's ground as well. So we're very excited by the prospect of these, and our next step is to bring in drill rigs to test across these zones. So we want to run fences of drilling across these large target zones to identify where the higher grade zone is within those particular pods, and then quickly advance those through further drilling to put us in a position where we can move to an exploration target or a resource target or resource statement on the size and scale of the iron ore that we have within our properties. So just to look back at where we've been, we've done the geological mapping, we've reprocessed the geophysics, and we're seeing that spatial relationship. So we're very, very confident that we're onto the right areas here within our zones. And our next step is to move forward with a phase of diamond drilling and advance that through ground geophysics and assay results to be able to move into a second phase of drilling relatively quickly. We'd like to be able to roll one into the other as we move into the delineation of a mineral resource. So we're trying very quickly to advance this project. There's a reason, other than we don't want to stand still, that we want to move the project forward quickly. And that comes to the key timing of infrastructural developments within the Simandou region. So Simandou, as I mentioned earlier, has been around since 1997 when it was first discovered. But it is isolated out in the southeastern portion of Guinea. It's a large infrastructural undertaking to bring this to market. And up until recently, there was no clear commitment to that. However, with Winning coming into the project in 2018, 2019, part of their agreement and signing of the mining convention was to develop or assist to develop this infrastructural corridor. So they've started some constructions at ports and work on tunnels, clearing areas for rail. However, that was happening in isolation, and the Guinean government wanted to see the entire operation develop in a single platform. So they paused the work and sat down with Rio to put together a term sheet and commercial terms to move forward with the entire development of the infrastructural corridor. That's now moved forward. They've created a joint venture company, which is Company Trans Guinea, that will own and operate the rolling stock and the rail. And the interesting part from our perspective is Bao Steel has now come in to also fund the development of or assist with the funding of the development of the infrastructure. And the Guinean government announced earlier this month that they anticipate works recommencing on the project early in March. So we're seeing a development timeline here that the government is sort of speaking to being in full flow and full development by 2025, we also think that's a timeline that we can move to move our project from where it is today to be in a position to have completed a pre-feasibility sometime into that area. So we're able then to negotiate for third-party access to the port and rail. That's a primary driver behind our timeline. We want to be moving on to be able to take the excess capacity off the rail and port. When we move through the scoping study and pre-feasibility, we'll have a look at what we need to do from a spur line perspective and additional infrastructure that we may need to put online. But we anticipate that there'll be excess capacity that we'll be able to take on commercial terms. Part of the mining convention that has been signed by the SIMFA or Rio group and the Winning group is to guarantee third-party access. So the government of Guinea, who will own 15% of the rail and port facilities, as well as the mining developments, wants to use this as an access corridor, not only for mine development, but for agriculture, for forestry, and to be able to use it at some degree for a commuter system as well. So they want it to be there to open up their country. So we're trying to be part of that process moving forward, and to do that, we need to move our project forward relatively quickly. And part of the product that comes from Simandou, as it's a high-grade product, we're looking at 65% plus. And we see this as a fundamental direction for the steel industry. We talk about decarbonisation of the world and electrification. We talk about using alternative fuel systems such as geothermal, hydro, nuclear. Everything that we build requires steel. So whilst we can talk about the use of lithium and cobalt and talk about alternative or rare earths to help with battery development, everything else around that requires steel. So we don't see the steel or iron industry diminishing in the future. And what we're also seeing is a movement away from the classic blast furnaces, which involve a large amount of carbon dioxide distribution, to a more environmentally friendly electric furnace, which means that we'll be looking for a higher grade product. They need to take a higher grade. They can't put the lower grade product into the blast furnaces. So moving very much to what's being termed a green steel environment. The global steel industry is facing a decarbonisation challenge. The classic blast furnaces that we operate at the moment take about 7 or 8% of the global greenhouse gases. That's really what they push out. So for every tonne of steel that goes out into the industry, we're looking at about 1.8 tonnes of carbon dioxide. With a movement to the electric furnaces, we're seeing a clear diminishment of that. It doesn't require the fossil fuels. It's electric-based furnace supplies, but it does require a high-grade ore, and that's really where we see a large market for the Simandou product. We also recognise that, excuse me, at 65% and moving into the blast or into the electric furnaces, you attract a premium to the classic lump and fines that are coming out of the Pilbara and out of Brazil. So we see the future for our project, perhaps not solely, but very heavily focused on the development of the green steel industry. In conjunction with that, we need to have a social license to operate. Arrow's been operating in Africa for a number of years now, and we've always focused our intentions on our local communities. So we've been working with our social groups, not so much on development of infrastructure for groups like helping and assisting with payouts, but we like to leave something more in the form of a legacy that can help our communities in the longer term. So helping them develop industries beyond their classic scope. We really feel as though we've engaged with our local communities regularly and the governments and are assisting them moving forward. We want to be able to leave something as a legacy when we actually move on or we develop the project further. So in summary, look, Arrow, very committed West African explorer. We are active in what is a world-class iron ore district with an area that we know the infrastructure is coming, and we're looking forward to seeing that development into the future. We have a very clear, systematic approach to exploration, and we're moving forward with a strategy that will deliver our investors and our company results in a very systematic way over the next 12 to 24 months. We also have a very strong board focused on developing assets in West Africa, and at the moment, very focused on strengthening our position within Simandou and becoming part of that future iron ore development pathway. And we have our little disclaimer slide that I'll leave up for a little minute for anyone that needs to read it. And I'd just like to thank you very much for your time this morning. And I will hand it back to Dannika so that we can discuss the project and any questions further.
Thank you very much, Hugh. That was really interesting. I particularly like the parts where you ran into the way that you target the higher grade ore and the methods that you're using there, and also the green steel element. So we'll now open it up to questions, and we have received quite a few through by email, so thank you to those who emailed them. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by typing it into the Q&A feature down the bottom of the screen. But we'll kick off with one that Simon sent through. He's asked, how do Arrow's tenements compare to others in the region, such as Winning and Rio, and even Robert Friedland's project?
Oh, it was interesting to bring Robert's project into the fold. So I guess what we have to the south of us with Rio and with Winning, and then our project to the north, it's a continuous belt of the Simandou range. So it's actually a mountain range that runs through that part of Guinea. And from our mapping and from what we understand of the geology down at Rio and Winning, the stratigraphy is the same, the rock types are the same, and we're seeing very similar geometric results from our analysis to what we're seeing to the south as well. So there's not a great difference geologically that we can see between Rio's ground, Winning's ground, and our ground. And what we see the main difference being is the advanced stage. A lot of work has been done to the south, but for us, it's relatively a new play, other than a limited amount of work done by Vale in 2006, 2007. And then if we look at Friedland's project down at Nimba, that's another iron ore province. So it's a similar situation where you're comparing the Pilbara to what's happening in the Gascoyne. There's two development areas within Guinea, but ours is the area that's getting the infrastructure put in place. So that's the one that we really want to focus on, because for a bulk commodity, infrastructure is going to be key. That's the key driver for the development process here. Yeah,
and that ties in nicely to a question that James asked. You did answer it in the presentation, but just in case he wasn't on the call at that stage, Arrow is definitely going to be able to get access to the infrastructure that's been set up by the Winning Rio Consortium at some stage.
Yeah, part of the mining convention that's been signed by, excuse me for wiggling a little bit, signed by Rio and Simfa and Winning Consortium guarantees third-party access. It's part of the legal process in Guinea, so it is there, it's enshrined. It is going to be capacity driven. So their design capacity at the moment is about 100 million tonnes on the rail. And that's part of why we're trying to move the project forward as quickly as we can, so that we're in a position where they're starting to ramp up. They'll be doing 20 or 30 million tonnes each, which only takes up half of the capacity. It provides an opportunity for us to then come forward with a pre-feasibility study and go, we would like to lock in some capacity on the rail system. So while that capacity is available, we want to be there to take that opportunity.
Yeah, timing should work out pretty well. So Susan asked on the green steel, she said, what do you mean when you say Arrow is a green steel play? You did touch on this as well, but perhaps if you could go into a bit more detail of the electric.
I'll go back over that because thanks, Dannika. It's a really important part of where the future for not just the steel industry, but globally for us as a people. It's about moving away from fossil fuels, and it's about moving to a point where we're able to reduce our greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide emissions. The green steel proposition is that we move away from the classic blast furnace that produces a significant amount of carbon dioxide and utilises a lot of fossil fuel in the process, to an electric blast furnace or electric furnace that is based around electricity to produce heat rather than coal. And it does require a component of additional power. It is a large power user, so it would be looking at being powered through hydro and alternative sources. But we also need to be able to feed a high-grade product. So you either use a pellet, so pelletizing lower grade material and upgrading it, or you're able to utilize a high-grade product direct from mine site. And that's where we see the 65% plus material from Simandou being able to feed into that green steel environment.
Okay, thank you for that. So Scott has asked a two-part question. The first part said he's read your AFR article, and could you please provide a bit more information about your background, experience and achievements?
Sure. Look, I'm a geologist by background.
He did actually say, you know, for small caps, it's all about the management team, but I was trying to make the question a bit more succinct there.
No, that's all right. And it is absolutely important that people understand our background. So I'm a geologist by background and have worked with large majors like Billiton and BHP. When I was with BHP, I was in the exploration division there. At that time, we were globally focused on bulk commodities such as the coppers and the iron ore components. So I was very much in the strategy and development team there for the iron ore, or for the global commodities. Post that, I moved to iron ore to move in with the RGP, which was the rapid growth programs, and that was about 2004, 2006, where we were moving the Pilbara from a throughput of around 80 million tonnes. I think we pushed it up to about 120 million tonnes without major infrastructural changes. So it was around optimisation. So I started with the integrated planning team there, and then moved into an area where we were focused on optimisation and integration between mine sites. So multi-mine sites coming onto a single rail system going into a single port. So trying to move the most valuable ore. Post that period with BHP, I moved into the junior industry and been involved with a number of junior companies for near on 12 or 14 years. Until I moved back to South 32 into a role with resource reserve governance. So I've got a history of exploration on the ground. I've got a history of working in the corporate area, working in development, working with juniors, and then moving into a governance role with South 32, which I was there for about 2 or 3 years, and then moved back to the junior company with Arrow post that time with South 32. So I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So the second part is why. What was behind your reason to take the role at Arrow?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of feeds into why would I leave South 32 to come and join Arrow. Through my career, I've worked with a number of high-quality individuals, and the mining industry is small. You come across a number of people through your lifetime. And at this stage, I'd worked with Tommy McKeith when I was in Indonesia, and I'd worked with Fraser previously as well. So these are two individuals that I respect greatly in the industry. And when an opportunity came to work with them at Arrow, it was an opportunity that I felt was a strengthening of a team. And also, I think Arrow had a great opportunity to re-emerge itself and strengthen itself as a company. So it's a challenge to regrow a company. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity, not only for myself, but for those people involved in the company to see a strengthening and emerging junior present itself in West Africa.
Absolutely. Yeah, right next to the big boys too. So Greg has actually said, can you speak to the issues? Why did Vale never develop the project?
Yeah, West Africa is always an interesting topic, and Simandou has had a checkered history. So what happened in about 2012, the Rio originally had all blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as I mentioned, they discovered them in 1997. They hadn't moved forward with those projects, so nothing had happened. So the government at the time divided the blocks and sold half of the blocks off to BSGR, which is a company, a smaller company operating in Guinea at the time. And that then subsequently brought Vale into the fold. So Vale did a deal, I think it was about $2.5 billion to come in on the project. So that tenure to the north, blocks 1 and 2, and there was a smaller block to the south that they were involved in as well. As events transpired, it was determined that there was these tenure was probably obtained improperly. And so everything got bogged down in a significant court case. But for Vale at the time, they'd started work on our northern area, or at least half of our northern area, prior to moving on to the southern area. So they started doing some of the work on our northern block. But once they secured access to blocks 1 and 2, which is a major ore deposit on it, they really didn't do any additional work on our northern block. They focused everything down to the south. Then when the court case came up and there was questions around the legitimacy of the title, Vale exited the project. So they never really were there long enough to do a significant amount of work.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned previously before we jumped on the webinar that you're going to site after your Cape Town meetings. From a boots on the ground perspective, what's it like to operate in Guinea, in your opinion?
It's a really, really wonderful country to operate in. The topography is pleasant. The people are lovely. Infrastructurally challenged, but as a geologist, you're kind of used to that to a large degree. We've got good infrastructure centres to the north and the south of our tenure, and we've got a couple of small villages in our area where the people are lovely, and they really couldn't have been more helpful to our teams in the field. So helping people move through the area, understanding where to go, finding the best routes, and providing a workforce to assist us. So operating in Guinea has been a very pleasant experience. Okay,
great. So I've just noticed we're over time. I've got one more question that John sent through. And if there's questions, I can see there's a couple that have come through in the Q&A. We'll get back to those individually after the webinar. My email address is Dannika, which is DANNIKA @investability.com.au. Please feel free to email me. But John has asked, how quickly do you think you can get the project into development?
Forward-looking statements are always fun. So caution here, forward-looking statement. At this stage, we are moving into a drill program that we envisage pushing through this year to be in a position to have a resource/scoping study sort of underway by early next year. So it's a fairly aggressive campaign in that space. From there, it would be moving into the drill out phase to put us into a stage where we can move to a pre-feasibility. So all things being equal, it depends on the pressure that we can apply on workforces to get things done. And it's always going to be a time versus money proposition.
Mm-hmm.
but we would like to be in a position that we're able to submit that pre-feasibility to the joint venture company sort of later in 2025 to enable us to capture that access on the rail line itself and infrastructural components. From there, then it comes down to how big the opportunity is going to be. Is it going to be a 200 million tonne deposit? Is it going to be a billion tonne deposit? We don't know. So to put a clear timeline to production, I think it's a little bit premature, but certainly we have a pathway to get us to that pre-feasibility. Yeah.
Okay. Well, are there any final parting words you'd like to leave shareholders and investors with today?
I'd just like to thank everyone for their time this morning. It's been this morning for me. Wow. It's been great to be able to talk about the project. I think we have a very exciting future for Arrow. I think this is a wonderful opportunity where we're sitting in a world-class province with major companies to the south of us, infrastructural development moving ahead, and we've got very clear targets that we want to hit in the next 12 to 24 months. So I think this is going to be a fantastic opportunity and a great leverage to the iron ore industry.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Hugh. It's been lovely to watch the sunrise in the background. So we'll let you get off to your meetings today. And I'm so glad that the Wi-Fi held in there as well. So that was great. We will provide a replay of the webinar for those who want to rewatch it, and that will be available on the company's website in coming days. We'll also shoot you an email so you get the link. So thanks again, everybody.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dannika. Thanks, everyone.